superstar of the AFL. Still he goes the skipper. The right boot beckons. He swings it around. That is a captain's goal. Tough one. Oh, that's a brilliant mark by Lee Spur. Sanderland's brilliant down to Barlow. What about that ruckman to Rover? Blitz the skipper. Captain courageous.
4 bounces, 5 men kick the goal.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Freo Big Footy Podcast. This week we'll be reliving the terrific effort by the boys last week down at Simmonds Stadium, with Fremantle ending up victorious, running out winners 12 goals 15-87 to 9 goals 18-72. This week we have our resident Victorian Freo guru on. Seppo, how are you, mate?
Great to be back on after a win, and excited we have a special guest all the way from the States back on with us.
We certainly do, and for those of you who read the Freo website, we've got the stateside docker, and obviously in the Big Footy forums we have Gil back on board. How are you, mate?
Doing great, living on cloud 9 this last week.
Excellent, and thanks very much for joining us over in LA. It's 6 in the morning over there, so we really appreciate your efforts in getting up at that time. So, Gil, how was it over there for you, mate, watching the game? What sort of time was it on for you and that sort of stuff? And did you watch it with a group of people, or how'd you go?
Well, I did. It was on at 9 o'clock at night. So I love the Saturday Arvo games because it's on at a reasonable time. And actually, I got to watch it with a guy that I'd written about in the Stateside Docker column, Chris McNeil, who we call Macca, who's the senior coach of the Orange County Bombers of the U.S. Australian Football League. And also he introduced me to a mate of his who's also from WA, from Perth, who we call Tamo. And that was it was fantastic because it was the first time I ever got to watch Dockers footy with fellow Dockers fans.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was great to actually see the photo they had up on the website with the your Indigenous round strip on there and the two other old jumpers. It was good to see that all the way in America. Do you often see any Freo merchandise around?
Very rarely. I don't even remember ever seeing any. The only time I've ever really had any conversation about it is with a couple of people, a couple of Aussies who've come to the States on holiday who've seen me wear Freo gear and say a couple of things. I actually ran into a Crows supporter down in Orange County who just gave me a go Freo when he saw my jumper. And so it's really bizarre sometimes to be in a country where no one knows at all what you're wearing and why you're wearing it, and then to hear that one rare person come out and mention something.
Awesome. And I suppose it'd be a little bit different over there, Gil, as well, because obviously in most American sports they don't have the song at the end of the game like they do in the AFL, so probably just a little bit different for that sort of in that regard as well.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about footy, and that's just part of the footy culture that I've learned to embrace, that you'd never see that in America. I think in American sports you'd probably have all the guys probably talking to their agents or doing something to that effect, and I love the unity. And so Macca and Tamo and I, we had our own version of the song right when the siren went, right after we were jumping all over each other, and then we just burst right into the song. It was beautiful.
Excellent. And Seppo, how was it for you down there, mate? Obviously, going into enemy territory, there's only a couple of thousand Freo supporters down there. How did it all go for you?
Oh, it was good for the second time this year. Obviously, round 14, we had down there before, but it was just great to go down, and the air of excitement as you got down to the stadium. It felt different to the earlier game this year, and it must have just been the swarm of Freo supporters I saw around the crowd. And even though we only had, I think, 3,500 to 4,000 there, it was great the way they set us up in the cheer squad behind the goals and filled the bay next door with Freo supporters, and right near the Freo Waste where the players and coaches came out, it was a good 3 or 4 bays full of Freo. It was just great to see them and hear them, not only us in the cheer squad, but the travelling members that they had on the other side of the ground. It was just great to hear them. And when we kicked a couple of goals in the last, it was just so loud. And even just rewatching the game and the replays on the telecast, it was amazing how much the supporter impact had at that ground.
Yeah, considering the size of the crowd there, I thought you guys were fantastic, and obviously all the travelling members and the people who are over there from Victoria. I mean, it sounded like the crowd was 50-50 there for a little while. It was awesome just hearing that Freo chant go through and just the crowd going nuts, and obviously James Brayshaw as well, which we heard in the intro with his commentary with Stephen Hill coming off the boundary line there. Just must have been awesome down there, and when seeing that goal sail through the middle, Seppo, from the other end.
Oh, it was one of my most memorable moments now, that game, and the way that everyone just went nuts when Hill slotted that goal through. Everyone knew it from then on that we were home and hosed, and it was an amazing roar when that went through. And I just love to. I've watched that Hill goal probably about 5 times since the game's been played, which is probably a record for me.
We're a bit excited up there, Gil, and Hilly's gone off on the sprint.
I couldn't believe that he had that much space in front of him. I thought it was an optical illusion. When I saw him and I saw nobody near him, I just jumped out of my chair and I said, "Oh my God, we're home! If he can just slot this through," because I remember a couple of minutes before Matt DeBoer kicked one, I thought that was going through and it didn't. And when Hilly took off, although it's funny, I have a nickname for him myself. I call him Stevie Wonder. And when he was going, I just kept yelling, "Come on, Stevie Wonder, slot it through." And I've never seen anything so far when a goal has gone through and just the opposition crowd just sit perfectly still. And I had to wait a couple of minutes, and then when I saw Hilly celebrating, that's when we just went nuts.
Yeah, no, it was a terrific part. So before we get to the end of the game, we'll just jump back a little bit to obviously the start of the game. Geelong got out of the gates pretty well through a courtesy of Zach Dawson giving away a bit of a sort of soft free kick, I suppose, but as we talked about last week, it's pretty important to keep that discipline. You don't want to give away any sort of cheap, easy free kicks, and the umpires were going to be looking out for it early. And Geelong really did have the sort of momentum early in the game, and I thought Fremantle did pretty well. Obviously, their poor kicking didn't help them, but they certainly got out of the gates quickly, and Fremantle just struggled to sort of adapt to the tempo. It seemed that way for the first sort of 10 minutes, with the interesting part of Ryan Crowley going to Matty Stokes, which was probably a bit of a turn-up for everyone watching.
Yeah, it was a brilliant piece of coaching by Lyon to shift Crowley straight onto Johnson once he started to have an impact. It actually made me a bit nervous that he was going off the chain a bit, and got away with those 2 goals and I think it was 7 disposals in that first quarter. But there's that second quarter is when I think they kicked the first and nearly got out to a 21, 22 point lead, and it was all Freo from then on, and it was assuring to know that there was a game day coach up there capable of just tweaking a couple of things around. And it was amazing just looking at the end of the game statistically. Freo won the hit-outs 53-16. We won the clearances 43-22, breaking that down to the centre clearances of 14-6. And Geelong actually won the inside 50s 55-51. So it just shows how well we worked and how much pressure we had to soak up from Geelong's constant inside 50s.
Absolutely. I think the other important point there was, I think Fremantle, after that initial sort of onslaught, were able to control the corridor. And obviously a lot of the games during the week, they were talking about how important that corridor is for Geelong's ball movement and things like that. And you could just see constantly every time Geelong tried to move the ball inside, Nat 5, Barlow, or one of our midfielders was able to sit in that corridor and just control the space and made Geelong push wide. And it just gave our defenders that little bit of extra time to run back and help out. And I think it was really important in the overall game who controlled that corridor. And I thought Ross Lyon did a really good job of being able to manoeuvre his midfield and having the right people in the right place, where you had guys like Nat Fyfe there who are able to play a bit taller than they are by taking those extra marks.
Gil, what was your favourite moment of the game, or what thing did you pick up from it that really surprised you, amazed you?
Well, right from the beginning, something that surprised me was even seeing Zach Dawson on James Podsiadly, because I would have thought they would have sent McFarland to him, even though, with Hawkins out, with Tom Hawkins out, I really thought then, okay, that'll free up Luke McFarland to take their most dangerous forward at that point. So when Dawson was tangling with Podsiadly, I thought, okay, maybe it's giving away a silly free kick, but at least it's showing that we're not going to be bullied by these guys, because they monstered us in the last time we played. And so I thought in some ways it was good to set that tone that we may be playing on enemy turf, but we're not going to be out-muscled, we're not going to be intimidated. So I thought that was really important. I totally agree with with the assessment about the midfield, because that's where the game was going to be won and lost. And I didn't think playing without Michael Johnson, as great a year as he's had, I didn't think that was going to be as impactful as it would have been if we had not had one of our midfielders available. Because if we go back to when we played in Geelong last, we didn't have Barlow and Mundy in that game, and I thought that made a huge difference. Favorite moment of the game probably had to be, I think, Barlow just played an unbelievable game, and he just had an uncanny knack for kicking goals exactly when we needed them. But I have to say, when Hayden Ballantyne kicked the set shot, that was huge, because it was a long way for him, and I thought that really did a great thing of sending that momentum forward.
And I think that was really important as well when looking at, when you're talking about that midfield, how important Aaron Sandilands was in coming back to form. A lot of people sort of had doubts about whether Sandy would have an impact at all or how he would be for the side. And I know during the week this is what Ross Lyon had to say on it.
I think it's his best game, his ruck work. The combination of him and Zach Clark really handled what they threw at us really quite well and gave our mids first use.
And I think between Sandilands and Clark, as you mentioned earlier, Seppo, giving those ascendancies in the headouts, it wasn't just the headouts, but the number of times we actually got hit out to advantage. We got the ball where we needed, and we were able to get that clearance from the middle, and just gaining metres there was really important. And those people, and Sandland's even better was probably in the last quarter when we needed him to stand up. Just taking those contested marks down in defence was just crucial.
And that, I think, went a long way to stopping Geelong scoring in that last. And it wasn't just Sandland's marks, but he actually ran around a bit and actually put a bit of pressure on. I was just amazed to see how well him and Pavlich both worked defensively and how they were still moving around the ground. It just shows that this they haven't lost anything in their legs. And it was, I think, Gil, you actually touched on it before with Zach Dawson's game. I was amazed. I actually went and had a look back on the stats. He played 100% time on ground, so he did not come off once, and he put in 12 1-percenters and actually had 4 contested marks. So he played a brilliant game defensively, which probably goes unnoticed by a lot of people. And Neil was another one that really showed up on the stats, but watching the game from where I was, from my point of view, didn't really see much of him, but it was just great to see that he got a lot of the ball, and obviously he's small in stature, but he racks the ball up in the middle when he's buried in that pack.
Lockie's been tremendous lately, especially from stoppages in the forward 50. And, you're right. He wasn't as noticeable as he'd been in past weeks. But while we're mentioning 1-percenters too, boy, what can you say about Lee Spur and also Cam Sutcliffe? He had Sutcliffe playing in a final in the biggest game of his life, and he stood up. And Spur has just been just unbelievable. I mean, here's a man who had one goal to his name. Before that game at the MCG, and here he was kicking a really important one coming out of defense. And also another thing that you mentioned too was Aaron Sandilands and the pressure that he put on James Podsiadly in that one instance where he couldn't even get a kick away, and then that set up the eventual main free kick after being taken over the back. That was a huge one. Yeah,
absolutely. And Lee Spur's obviously played quite a few grand finals for Central Districts in the SANFL, and you can see, even though the AFL's a step up, just he had that composure in the big occasion. And even during the week, Ross Lyon was a real big rap for him, and I think it was on Monday night he had this to say.
Another one, he's accepted the task given to him with open hands and really grabbed hold of it and secured his spot. Look, he's as tough as they come. He's speed, endurance athlete. He's got good skills, but more importantly, he's a team player, and he'll do anything for the team to see that the team gets across the line, and he fits in really well.
And I think one thing, Seppo, and I don't always agree with what Matty Lloyd does say, but I really do think that probably 2 years ago, Pavlich wouldn't have worked as hard as he did defensively, buying into Ross Lyon's game plan as he did on the weekend. A couple of times I reckon Pav, as awesome as he is, he didn't always have that defensive side to his game that some of the other players, particularly, and sometimes it comes down to perceived effort and that sort of stuff. But that spoil he sort of showed in the last quarter was probably the best defensive effort I've seen from him in probably, I can't remember a better one, to be honest. And it was just at a critical time, and that's what you want from your captain. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, it's a great shine of leadership from him, and it's probably, like you said, it's probably one of the best defensive efforts I've seen from him ever. Really, I can't remember. You don't think of those type of moments from someone like Pav, and it was just great to see he stood up where it counted, where the game was right in the balance towards the end. So well done from him.
Guys, I have to ask, where in the world did he come from? I've watched the replay, and I'm thinking, what was he even doing down there? And it was just phenomenal. You talk about being in exactly the right place at the right time, and that spoil was absolutely crucial.
He must have snuck on from the interchange, because I couldn't see him. He's been so well for our structures and staying forward and actually stretching the defence out that he must have just snuck on from the interchange and led by example and really just covered whoever played. I think there was 2 going back there, so good on him.
But the interesting thing was he actually ran pretty much straight back to the boundary after he did it. So I don't know whether he was actually working his way off the ground and sort of realised where the ball was going and sort of bolted down, or what it was. But it was certainly a terrific defensive effort. And obviously, like guys like Chris Mayne, once again, even though he didn't kick a lot of goals, the amount of pressure acts he had on there was, awesome. And even probably and we thought which would be a strength of ours with Walters and Ballantyne in terms of kicking a lot of goals, as some of the small forwards had this year against Geelong. They didn't really get off the chain as much as we maybe thought they did. So, we've still got plenty of room for improvement as well, which is, really pleasing. And I think, Lyon touched on it a little bit during the week in terms of the ball movement and that sort of stuff. And this is what he had to say.
Ability to score and get entries was critical. So the ball movement's gone through the roof, to be frank.
And so, hopefully we'll see the evolution of that forward line. And, getting more and more games together is really important as well. We've only had probably 3 or 4 games where the forward line is sort of been in the same team together or gelling together, and I think it's just going to get better and better as we move along. Yeah. Any other points, Seppo, you would like to bring up, mate, on the game on the weekend?
No, I think we can go on to speak a bit about the hypotheticals and have a look at Sydney and Carlton. It's a game that I'm going to be tuning into on Saturday to see who we're going to face in the week after. Obviously, there's another week to go, a bit of water under the bridge, but it'll be interesting watching this weekend of football to see who we're going to come across against. And the other thing we'll learn is from the other side of the draw how Geelong will step up against Port.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Gil? Was there anything in the, just before we do move on to that little bit, was there anything in the Geelong game you want to bring up before we continue on?
I just think it's great to see how we are becoming such a strong team that we can win in many different ways. I thought your point was excellent before about, the small forwards not having as much of an impact as we've seen, where we all thought that was going to be perhaps a difference maker. But, we're becoming a team that can beat opposition in a lot of different ways. I mean, with the play of the midfield, the crumbing goals from the small forwards, just so many different ways. And I think that's a testament to this team's growing depth.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting as well, even at the end of the game, there was obviously a little bit of, bit of toing and froing with Ryan Crowley, who did, as you said, mentioned earlier, Seppo did a terrific job on Steve Johnson, and Crowley went over to shake his hand, and, Johnson gave him a bit of a push-off, and for some reason the commentators seemed to think that Crowley was the instigator of it, even though it was quite clear to everyone that Johnson was the one who pushed him to begin with. So, as a bit of a tribute to Crowley's effort on the weekend, I think we'll have to have a little Ozzy Osbourne in there, so we'll just chuck this in just for a sec.
Mr. Crowley, it's symbolic, of course, approaching a time that is classic.
And I think the other important point that you made there, Gil, was when you were talking about how Fremantle have developed different ways to win. I think that was sort of brought up a little bit by Lyon during the week, just saying how they've made subtle changes to the game plan. And even in the interview we had with Anthony Grover last week, he was sort of mentioning about how he could just notice those subtle changes in the game plan that Fremantle had. And it was interesting just to see what Lyon had to say about it during the week.
The way we've played, the way we've structured up the start of the year to now, there's some, it'd be 20% difference. So you've got to continue to evolve and change, and they're only subtle, but you have to, we obviously pick it up.
Yeah, so I think that was a pretty good point you made there, Gil, and I think that extra flexibility helps us when we're looking at which team we're playing and how we're going to approach that game. Just gives us the players that extra confidence as well, that they know that regardless of who we play, they've got that ability to step up and control the game if they want to.
Absolutely. I think the big thing this year has been the resilience that we've shown when one player or more than one player is out of the 22, and how we make up for that. Because I'm thinking, keeping my fingers crossed here, that Ibo will get back in, Garrick Ibbotson, for the prelim. So it's going to be interesting if he's if he's fit and firing, and where we'll plug him in, and who comes out of the side, and how that role will be taken up.
You've still got Johnson to think about there. It's amazing with what you're saying about the resilience of our side. Looking from say the start of the year, where we started off with Griffin, then we had Kepler, we've lost them, and then Hanneth came in, performed admirably for those few games, and then Clark stepped up from that Sydney game. And it's amazing just how now we've lost players to suspension as well, with Fife and Pav, and now we're hitting the right time of year with almost, you throw Johnson and arguably Ibbotson and Clancy, and we're looking at our best 22 all out there and all in form. There's not too many players that have really dropped off. They've all just improved, and we're just peaking at the right time. I'm excited for this prelim.
Yeah, I think it'll be crucial in that. And I think you made a good point there, Seppo. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the match committee approaches the team selection with Ibbotson and Johnson. I think it was, and one thing we didn't really touch on, and I think it was actually a pretty important thing for Fremantle in the overall picture, was the fact that McFarlane got through that whole game without reoccurrence of injury. And you really struggle to go into a game when you're looking at finals to have more than one player under an injury cloud. And if you go with two, and particularly if they get injured early, if one of them goes down, you've got, with the sub rule, you can't really afford to go in a final with having one less rotation on the bench. And I think it hurt Richmond a little bit even on the weekend when Conker went down so early in the game. And I think it's going to be a really critical decision for the match committee on how they structure up, because both Sydney and Carlton play quite different games. Sydney's more that inside. They don't really rely on the outside run, where Carlton rely on their outside runners in particular more than I know they're a good clearance side, but they really do rely on their spread, and particularly guys like Yaron and Betts and those sort of players. So it'll be interesting to see which way Fremantle go in terms of the selection, particularly with Ibbotson and Johnson. Any thoughts about which team you'd prefer to face this week, Gil, after the game?
Well, the thing is, I kind of had my Nostradamus hat on last week when I picked the 4 games. Somehow I got all 4 right. And I'll tell you one thing: it's going to be very interesting if we play Sydney, because my wife barracks for Sydney, so we might have a divided household on that one. So in one sense, I wouldn't really read too much into the time that we thrashed Carlton earlier in the season. I have to admit, though, it would be just monumentally satisfying to see us beat Sydney if we get them, because it's a team that we haven't beaten in quite a while, and that draw this year was just such a great game. And in some ways, I think it would be poetic justice to play them again, and then have that little role reversal of the 2006 prelim when we were over there and came up short, to now have them at home and to now win. I think that would be fantastic. But honestly, I'd be happy with a victory over whomever if we have to get to the grand final.
Yeah. I suppose when you look at the two sides, from fans' perspective, everyone will want the easy run and thinking, oh yeah, let's beat Carlton to get into the final. But from, I reckon, the coaching and players' point of view, there's probably a lot more to draw on beating a good side like Sydney to get that bit of confidence and get that little battle hardness into a big grand final coming against, Hawthorn or Geelong or possibly even Port. So I reckon from what will actually be better for the team might be better to face Sydney. So I'm hoping they get through, but we still beat them in the prelim.
I don't know if you guys saw this stat. There was a really interesting stat that I just read. It was a story I read in The Age where it was mentioning Daniel Hannebery. And, he's the only player that I've ever seen really get off Ryan Crowley's tag and really torch him. But the thing is, Hannebery, there's a stat that showed that if Hannebery gets 22 or more possessions, the Swans are unbeaten. But if he's under that, then the Swans have a really hard time. And I would have to think, as good a tagger as Crowley is, he has to have learned his lesson from that first encounter with Hanbury. But then something interesting with Hanbury is that he has been used as a tagger, by Longmire in a recent game. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Hanbury is a tagger himself, where Crowley is going to go and who he's going to go to and how that'll change things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was probably a bit of a surprise last week with Hanbury doing that tagging role. And sometimes maybe you think, do the teams try and sort of outsmart themselves, or the coaches outsmart themselves? And I think even Lyon admitted that himself when he probably put Crowley on Stokes early, although Stokes does provide a lot of overlap run and forward entries in for the Geelong side. Sometimes coaches or match committees can over sort of complicate it sometimes. And, in the end of the day, Lyon admitted himself that he probably made a mistake putting him on Stokes early. But at least he's acknowledged that, and particularly early in the game, and was able to make that switch with Crowley, which is really important. So I think either team, it's interesting that they have two very different styles of play. So it'll be interesting to see which way. I think the Fremantle side that they go in with may actually be a little bit different depending on who gets through. Lyon's made it pretty clear throughout the season that he's a horses for courses type coach. And obviously, depending upon the number of tools that Carlton go with, as you said, Sydney have got a little bit more with Tippett and White and Pike if he's resting ruckman, or whether Sydney themselves decide to go with 3 ruckmen if they're playing on Subiaco, which is obviously a much bigger ground than ANZ Stadium or the SCG.
Well, maybe I hope Carlton gets through, so Ross can pick Crichton to take care of one of the little three amigos in Yaron, Betts or Garlett. So there's a small chance if Ibo and Johnson don't get up, and we need a small defender who's shown that he kept Milne right down, that there's a spot in the back line, possibly, maybe. I'm grasping at straws here.
Seppo, you've got such a big soft spot for Jesse Crichton. What's up with that, man?
Oh, he's been my buddy on Big Footy this year. I've tried to support him as much as possible, and I just love the way he goes about his business. And I just hope that Lyon's seen a lot in him this year and keeps on giving a big pump up for all the 6PR talks he does on Monday night. So if Lyon sees it, hopefully our list managers see it and keep him on for next year.
I think it was, to be honest with you, Seppo, I think he should... Crichton should look at employing you as his agent, because I think you do a hell of a lot more for him than his agent in terms of pumping his tyres up.
Either as his agent or his hairdresser, right?
He needs one, maybe both.
The other interesting news during the week was obviously the re-signing of Alex Silvani for a 1-year contract, as well as the upgrade of Taberner to the main list. And also the extension of our other in Tanner Smith. But I think the Silvani re-signing was a really important one for the club. Although he's not always necessarily going to be top 22 or best 22, you can't have enough of those type of players. And I think as we move forward into the way the AFL is going, I think that there'll be games where they'll probably rest McFarlane, if he goes on next season, where they do long road trips to Gold Coast, Brisbane, the Tassie trip, if no doubt we'll get again. And, you can just rest McFarlane home for those ones, and you can bring Silvani in with confidence, because although Smith showed a bit this year, he's probably only played 3 or 4 games and still needs another season or 2 in the weights room.
It's true. And when you look at it, Silvani's played, I think it's 10 games this year, so he has been required, even though a lot of people sort of had him on the outer, but he's very handy, played forward and back, and he's crucial while we're waiting for young Tanner Smith to develop as another backman. So it's quite crucial that we just kept him on.
And the other important, as you said, Taberner, I think, is also an important signing. I know some people are still not convinced on him, but after watching him, and I've watched him a little bit for Peel this year, his leading patterns are really, really strong, and his ability to repeat lead is second to none for a player of his age. And I've watched, obviously, quite a few Colts kids and young players coming through, and it's really hard to get players to be able to do that consistently. And obviously, probably the best player in the league at it is probably Nick Rewalt in terms of his ability to continually lead and run back. And Matthew Richardson was another player who was also very good. But I think over time, as he develops a little bit more, I think Taberner will become a really, really handy centre-half forward for us down the track.
Yeah, it's interesting to read in that article as well that we've already agreed to give him that extension. Obviously, nominate him in the as a rookie upgrade, so he's going to be off the rookie list next year and onto our main list. So it's quite interesting. Obviously, showing a lot of faith to get him straight off there, and hopefully maybe look at a couple of games next year.
Yep. Any thoughts on the re-signing skill at all? Or?
Well, one of the things that it told me straight away was it doesn't seem that that Silvani's going to be traded anywhere, because I remember last year there was even a rumor that was going around that he was even going to be delisted. And so that's got to do wonders for Silvani's confidence, and he's definitely stepped up, and we've needed him to this year.
Absolutely. And I think it'll, down the track, I think he's only still 26 now, so he's really going to have another 4 or 5 years in footy if he can manage to continue to develop his game. And there's obviously going to be that little bit of a break, I think, between when McFarlane retires and when maybe Smith's ready to take that next step if he does. And let's hope he does do that. So I think I think it's an important re-signing for the club. And, it'll be interesting to see what the club does in terms of list management. I have a funny feeling we still haven't heard a lot on Jaden Pitt and what's happening with him. It was great to see him down at the club or down at the ground on the weekend and the boys embracing him. And maybe I think the club will probably look at maybe rookie listing him next year until he gets depending on how he goes with his heart condition. And let's hope he is able to get back out on the track as soon as he possibly can. What do you think, Seppo? Any thoughts on what they'll do with the list management at the end of the year?
Well, I do like the idea of rookieing Pitt if he has sorted out his health issues, which has got to be taken quite seriously, because that's obviously got to be first with the player managers and keeping Pitt's health at sort of first priority there. But the other moves are going to be quite interesting based on, Silvani signing on might spell the end for Fox if we've got to make a couple more changes on the main list. And there's a couple there. It'll be interesting if we go to the trade table with anyone or guys that might still be under contract. So I think there's still a bit more to play out. And obviously until we're obviously finished with our season, you probably won't hear too many more signings, I think, until the end of the season.
Yeah. The other important thing I think you've got to look at as well is it wouldn't be surprised at all if Fremantle end up doing a little bit like St Kilda did with Jason Blake last year, as you need 3 D lists. And if you have a look at our D lists coming up in the following year, there's not too many guys on there who you'd think will be worthy of a D list. Or also with our rookies that we bring on this year, they've really got to have at least 2 years in the system. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Fremantle redraft another player in that regard and just put them on a 1-year contract. And then if they don't pan out or they want to move the rookies on, they can sort of delist them the following year. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go with that. Where they'll look at a player who's in that back 3, as you maybe one of even your man, Seppo and Jesse Crichton, because obviously we do have a dearth of small defenders. And I don't honestly think anyone would pick him up in the draft. So if they did delist him, they may pick him up again, because obviously we need to take 3 draft picks. So they may end up taking him back like they did with Jason Blake at St Kilda, if that might be a way they look at. Or, as you said, looking at the trade table, which way they decide to go in that regard. I think it would need to be a pretty good deal for Fremantle, depending on who they're looking at. Obviously, Viv Michie at the moment hasn't re-signed, and obviously he's probably one that gathers the most interest, I suppose, for most people on the big footy forums, based on his form and the fact that he won the best and fairest, I think, for Peel during the week. Yep. In their league side, which is obviously a tremendous... Big
congratulations to Viv for that, because it's pretty good considering he had a couple games out with injury, I believe. So,
plus he played the game with Fremantle as well, so there was another game he missed. So, and let's hope he does stay on. I know obviously there's some different stories going about whether he's homesick or... and obviously whether he gets a game as well. I mean, sitting there each day, it's a bit hard, with when you're looking at the guys he wants to sort of cement or take out of the side. So it's a difficult thing for the club, but it's also a good thing for the club to have in terms of those sort of guys wanting to push in and get a spot as well. All right. Anything else you want to add, Gil, for the pod tonight?
Well, I think if we're talking about next year, not to look too far ahead, because I'm going to go back to the Ross Lyon maxim, which is staying in the moment. But it's interesting to think about how Anthony Morabito might slot into the team next year, and I'm really excited to hopefully have the opportunity to watch him play. And then also just looking around at possibly adding a tall forward. It's interesting this week to read that with Paul Roos now taking the reins at Melbourne, how Jack Watts is now more likely to stay. And, there's a certain big, tall forward in Sydney that's attracted a lot of interest, and he seems to have had a breakout year. So it's interesting to think ahead, but there's so much excitement right now in what's going on, and especially when we don't seem to be showing too many weaknesses. Just a really, really exciting time.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, as you said, that'll be the last we talk about until the end of the season. And it's also terrific for us as a Fremantle supporter, the fact that we don't have a bye as such. There's no bye during the regular season, and we've got a week off, and we're still going in the season with only 2 weeks to go. So getting that bye for the prelim is just awesome. So. All right. Have we lost anyone?
No,
Yep.
still
Still
here.
No, that's all good. No, I thought I had it drop out, that's all. So, and obviously I hear this week that, Gil, they're doing a bit of a piece on you in the Perth Now paper.
Yeah, the Perth Sunday Times. Wendy Cachetta interviewed me by phone, and a photographer took some shots of me in Dockers gear down the beach and around the Hollywood sign. And the really funny thing is after the photographer was with me, his next appointment was Paris Hilton. So anytime I get to go ahead of Paris Hilton, that's saying something.
They got their priorities straight.
I'm sure all the Fremantle listeners will be more than excited so we can have a bit of a read of the Sunday Times. Anything else you'd like to add, Seppo?
No, other than the fact that if you want to follow Gil on Twitter, he's got his new Twitter handle. I think it's at Stateside Docker. So if you want to follow Gil, get around him. And good luck to all those that have successfully registered for the grand final ballot. I know myself have secured my cheer squad ticket if we make it there. And well, obviously we'll have another podcast before the prelim next week. But it could be interesting in the next few weeks. And all chaos will break loose once we're through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that a few of the Freo supporters I talked to, the work productivity's probably dropped a couple of percent this week. So thinking about what could have been and getting themselves all organised and with the flights and accommodation and thinking about what could be. So it's certainly exciting times ahead and foreign territory for a little bit of us. So it hopefully will be a terrific week, and we'll look forward to seeing the result. And everyone will be watching closely the Sydney Carlton game this week, and then looking forward to the prelim the following week. And no doubt Ticket Tech will be being hammered early Monday morning. All right.
Definitely. I registered too yesterday, and planning on making the trip if we make it.
Oh, that's terrific.
Great to see you here, Gil, and if we do make it, when we do.
That's it.
Yeah,
so,
there we go.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully be able to get a few of the big footy people together on the weekend over there, when hopefully celebrating, or at least enjoying the festivities of the weekend there. So thanks again for joining us this week. Just a reminder, if you haven't already done so, you can certainly subscribe via iTunes or obviously listen on the Big Footy website. Have a great weekend. This weekend, just relaxing, watching the two teams beat each other up, and we'll come out all guns blazing in the prelim. Thanks for joining us again, Gil.
Let's go Freo.
Terrific. And thanks again, Seppo, for joining us, mate.
No worries, guys. Start wearing purple and enjoy the week off.
It is the Wear Purple to Work day tomorrow, so if you haven't already done so, consider what you're going to wear, and we'll catch you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for joining us.